Greetings. Tesla has an earnings beat on January 29, 2020, and we explain why. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, and welcome back. I wanted to note to you that, as usual, we're at our local service facility at Tesla, and we really can't be on property, so I wanted to demonstrate where we're at. Please note that there's a small group of cars in front of the building, and those are mostly test vehicles for customers, and the large group of cars you see on the side of the building are vehicles with red service tags that need service work. If this is your first time on our channel, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. I apologize for the hat, but it's cold out here. We wanted to note that we're going to start a new thing. We call it PLP, and I'll call it parking lot purloined, which means that in the black neighborhoods we call it parking lot pimping, but in the non-black neighborhoods it's parking lot purloined. So I wanted to just review with you the fact that we're kind of starting a new process. We like to be out here in the parking lot once every, at least once a month. It'd be better if we did it twice a month so you could get a better feel for numbers. We like to hand out data and not just talk yak. So here's some statistics for you. The first statistic is that there are currently 65 vehicles in need of service that are not inside the building. I think there are 3 or 4 in there as well. Number one. Number two, it's the number of vehicles is 65, but that is vehicles that we can tell are service vehicles. There are about 15 vehicles that are in front of the building, which are, like you can see the white Model 3 behind me. And so that row of vehicles sits in front of the building, half of which are actually test drive vehicles. And so we didn't know what to expect when we got here, given that they really had a hard push at the end of last quarter in terms of vehicles for sale. So I went and got a chance to do a quick count of the vehicles being prepared but not yet delivered to customers. We counted approximately 50 vehicles there, between 50 and 60 vehicles. The makeup was, as you would expect, heavily Model 3s at about, I would say 60-65%. And then we had Model X's and S's there. Again, we typically can, you're not allowed to really do stuff on there. You get in real trouble. So if you guys have suggestions on what we might do better, we're always interested in your ideas. I wanted to go with this data for you because we're kind of starting a new series called PLP. And one of the goals of that is to show you the parking lot and show you the numbers that are here, on a quarterly basis at different dates. So what you'll be able to do on our show is go back and look for all the PLP listed shows and just take a quick glance on a fast speed through and look at how many vehicles are on site at that time. We'll include that in the notes here so you could literally sort of get a general feel for how did the quarter go. Was it a good or bad quarter with data points coming from this location? So what we're going to ask our viewers to also do is to just count out the number of vehicles they see outside the building in their respective locations around the world, and then we can collect that at the end of each quarter and have some sense of what the numbers are going to be. So look forward to any comments you have and suggestions in that regard. So our show today focuses on one question: will Tesla meet or beat? Thank you, Graham. The question is, will Tesla meet or beat their earnings estimate on January the 29th? And the answer we have to that is it's a no-brainer. And the reason it's a no-brainer that they beat is, number one, we already know how many cars they sold during the quarter, which is 112,000 times an average price of $58,000. Now that doesn't include what's going on in solar of different types and all that stuff. It's just cars. There's no other way we can really gather what those numbers are until we see how the balance sheet looks. So thank you for asking why we do not cover what's happening with solar all the time. The second thing that I wanted to review is the question is, why do they beat? So there's something in America called smoothing. And what it is that all the large companies out there that are public have a problem, which is shareholders, investors want to see a very smooth process of increasing profit and revenue for any company that they invest in. And so what the companies decided to do is that all these companies decided that they would develop a process where they kind of hide cash on the balance sheet, and that way they can offer investors a very smooth sort of upward trajectory usually on earnings unless something really bad happens. So as a result of this smoothing process, someone asked me online, and kind of what drove this show was the fact that they were like, well, how's Tesla going to do? And Tesla has what I call a smoothing competitive advantage over a lot of companies. And what is that? The deposits. So let's do some general numeric add-ups on where Tesla is currently in terms of deposits that are sitting around waiting to be used in the smoothing process. Number one, Tesla has smoothing cash, if you will, because at this point we believe they're at about at least 50, but perhaps 100,000 reservations on Model Ys. Each of those require $2,500, and that would be between China and the United States. So let's start with that number. So 100,000 people have put in $2,500, 2.5 bill. Now let's look at it. It's not a big deal. 250,000 times $100 for all the Cybertrucks, and let's add in the fact that we have like 20, maybe 30,000 reservation for the semi-truck, and the numbers are too small to think about on the 50,000 or 40 or 25,000 reservations at $50,000 a piece at least for the Roadster. So you're starting to get the idea here that Tesla has a large amount of cash that's sitting around currently, and they can, in the smoothing process, reclassify some of that cash or do whatever they want with it. But the whole idea is that you have all this money sitting around, and when needed, you can kind of roll it in to smooth over the spaces. So as a result of the smoothing process, we know Tesla's not going to miss, because its car sales were good and they have all that cash to do the smoothing. So the other issue is Tesla had $5 billion on the bank, on the books with a profit last time. So this time, if they had any issues with profit, they can sort of do a little smoothing process and move that cash nicely over in the balance sheet, and everything looks terrific. So as a result of the smoothing and the fact that we already know what revenue was like from the cars, it's just almost impossible for Tesla to miss. Clearly they could, but we think they'll beat, but they won't necessarily beat significantly because it forces them to sort of move cash around the balance sheet to do so, and it's better to just leave it where it's at and have it be cash you have on hand to address anything that might pop up. So I guess another nice thing for Tesla is they have a lot of convertible debt, and as the stock price is so high right now, they're soon to do some sort of refi of that debt that facilitates them doing better. So I'm kind of eager to walk you guys through the lot to show you what's going on. I was trying to run through statistics there quickly, and let me get back to it just for a second, which would be of the cars here. I was kind of surprised where the cars in service right now have gone 50% Model 3s, and the rest are maybe 10% Model X's and about 10 or 15% Model S's. So we thought that was kind of an interesting new thing that's developed. What's surprising here that I didn't see, that I wasn't expecting, is that based on seeing everything empty 3 weeks ago, I expect they would have a hard time sort of refilling to handle customer orders for now, but that ain't a problem right now. So basically we have good inventory levels. We don't see any shortage signs. the inventory levels are such that when we're heavy inventory, undelivered cars will be parked outside the building, and they're not parked outside now. So it's clear that there seems to be a pretty good matchup of number of vehicles ordered against the number of vehicles that are sitting on the lot. So let's get back to our earnings discussion. So Tesla has the luxury of smoothing, and so therefore I think that it's a no-brainer. It won't be a major event what comes up here from this side of it. So as we've talked about repeatedly, there are kind of three components that will drive what happens next for the stock. Number one, the what just happened, and those numbers have to be shown and how it sits on the balance sheet. Number two, we will have to take a look at little doggy there going by. He's giving me the bark there, but very cool dog. Nice mutt. At any rate, the second component is sort of near-term prospects, meaning heading into next quarter, heading over the next, let's say, 3 to 6 months. What are we seeing? And the message that'll come from that is sort of what's happening numbers, and this is the beginning of our China discussion. So we think that every piece of detail that emerges from China and what's going to happen in terms of how many vehicles they're producing, how many can they produce, when will they ramp from the current, let's call it 3,000 a week to 10,000 a week, so that we can start to see how it's going to push on earnings for next quarter. If the answer is we're not telling you anything, stock price kind of gets hurt a little bit. If they're saying everything's fine, we're hanging in there, that's another statement. Another statement would be, the place is running 2 shifts and we're exceeding the number of vehicles we're planning on producing, and that obviously would cause a little bit of pandemonium when it comes to the stock. And we're kind of expecting that because Tesla is kind of in a bad position. They can sort of hide information if they want, but you can count the cars in a parking lot, so it makes it really hard to sort of hide data in this case, particularly when it comes to China, with drones flying every day to show us what's in the parking lot. So, what do we have behind us here? Looks like we have a tow truck that's pulled up. And this is kind of unusual because of the low underside of the Tesla vehicles, particularly the big ones, the X's and the S's. Folks typically don't hook up to the back of a car. They usually put on a flatbed. So that's kind of an interesting situation to see a regular tow truck and not a flatbed carrying the vehicle. So getting back to our discussion, the other issue is, this whole, I call it SARS, but it's the coronavirus issue. I think that, it definitely, the Tesla store is shut down right now in Wuhan, and so there are sales not happening, but it's such a big country, and you can shift inventory elsewhere that I don't think it's a big deal. But we should definitely keep an eye out for this, because it definitely could have an impact. So, again, what we're concluding is that yes, earnings are going to be solid. Absolutely, the guidance and the number of vehicles targeted is what the whole show is about in terms of what they have to say. And I think they can't shade the truth hugely, because everybody actually can see how many vehicles are moving. And there's a couple of comments floated on the screen about Trump and the fact that he thinks that Elon's a genius now, even though he quit after looking at the environmental policies, one of the panels that the government had. So what I'm sort of getting at here is that we're in a solid number zone, and as was just stated, guidance is going to drive everything. And we think, based on what we're seeing in China and the movement of new product out of that plant, and they're introducing the Model Y, China becomes a no-brainer in terms of great numbers, hence the potential for a ballistic if they slip up and really give us, a solid reckoning of what's going on. I want to say that this earnings announcement is also somewhat of a test for me of Robin Dedholm, who became the chairman of Tesla. The reason it's a test is that Tesla's moved to a process of not BSing folks anymore in general under the new chairman. And she indicated that they were starting out at 3,000 a week, according to Elon, and they would be jumping up to about 10,000 a week in production at the new facility. So the question that kind of pops up is, you know, well, anyway, in general, the guidance drives everything, and under the new chairman, there seems to be a more do what we say type of an environment for Tesla. So based on us entering this new realm, we're expecting to hear kind of a no BS what's going on, and that no BS what's going on, we hope or plan it to be 10,000 a week coming out of that factory. And once we know when that is and we can extrapolate the numbers that it represents, that's where the whole show is. So we look forward to getting that information. So one of the our viewers was talking about sell the news, police motorcycles rolling by. There's a sell the news discussion. The reality is that you know, the hedge funds really go heavy prior to earnings and use hedging as a way to manage what's going to happen in there. So typically, I have to agree with them. I think the stock price is going to be down 3 to 5%, maybe 10% after earnings are announced. And after those earnings are announced, I'm then expecting a large number of institutional players to buy back in, because they now have more statistics with which to buy that they don't have currently, given the run that the stock has had, and the fact that they now get a chance to start getting a feel for how China's doing from the company rather than what's been deduced by watching the parking lot. So yeah, there it is. The tow truck guy actually towed the car here. That's, like I said, that's rare, because the under setup of the car tends to be destroyed by tow trucks. If you have a Tesla and has to be towed, I wanted to encourage you to not use that kind of truck. Make sure you use a flatbed if you can to avoid damage. At any rate, we've sort of covered what we think is the earnings plan and why coming forward. The final thing I wanted to run by you guys today is, as I was coming over here, wow, looks like a bunch of police motorcycles, therefore presidential visit here, looks like. Today's show, we wanted to, okay, let me twist here so you guys can get a feel for what's happening. So what's happening now is, as we get a motorcade from the president coming through, I don't know if you can see that. Wow, go. I couldn't talk anyway, so check it out. Check it out. Yeah, so DC is VIP motorcade heaven, and you can see them rolling by with multiple police escorts, and wow, that's cool. So DC is kind of the VIP capital of America. So you have large numbers of police everywhere, and they're kind of rolling, as you just saw. I'm going to get booted here by the Tesla employees, but I just wanted to give you a span of the parking lot, because the objective there is that as we get into future shows, and you know you've seen the lot, you can kind of work from there. So here we have 63 vehicles in, and then we have a white van, one of the you know, that are kind of right there. So we just wanted to run you by what the lot looks like, because we're going to be showing you the same lot once a month, twice a month. And then if you want to go backwards to figure out, well, what's happening with Tesla, you can kind of use those shows as a general guide to sort of feel the numbers, rather than somebody having to send them to you. You can just say, hey, we had 63 cars, etc. The last thing I wanted to cover today is, when I was coming over here, something very strange happened. Anytime a Model 3 or other Tesla is going by me, I try to gather as much data, number of people in the car, gender, age, you know, dual motor, whatever the vehicle may be. So I saw a white Model 3 that I went by this morning, and it was really, something really strange happened. What happened is that the owner of the Model 3, as they got next to my car, the car suddenly swerved left very quickly, and changed lanes, and then stabilized and went forward. And so I was like, wow, what just happened? And I think I actually know what happened, which is we have a freeway in the greater DC area called 66. And there's a large amount of construction being done to expand it. And so they have these very abrupt changes that they're making as they gradually do that expansion. So what we deduced from this is the fact that, yes, you could be running on autopilot and it's usually using the radar sonar, but you also could be running off of mapping that was done of the roadway. And so if it hits a spot where the decision is between the map that's laid out and what the vehicle is seeing, it might make a swerve to fit the lanes because it's following the lane lines, even though there might be a conflict of data between what's supposed to be there, which is a straight line. So I kind of just wanted to mention this to you because what we've noticed is if you look at several of the major accidents that have occurred with Teslas, it typically happens in situations where there might be people doing construction of some type, so cones have been laid out, and the lane structure that was there previously has changed slightly, and so the cameras have some issues in figuring out, what's going on in spaces that aren't well marked long time freeway that's been set up. So you might want to take a peek at this as you're doing autopilot to see if your car reacts in a similar fashion. But that kind of surprise could be very expensive and painful if your car crashes. So it also might be the time when you might want to back off autopilot as a way to ensure that you're not running into some issues. Can one production line produce Model 3s and Model Ys? Hey, good question. Our understanding is that the production line of Fremont is going to be producing 3s and Ys on the same line, and they're building, I don't know if it's finished yet, a new line to run exclusively Ys. So that's our understanding from what we've read, so good question. At any rate, we're at the point now where we typically take questions if you have any. It's Friday, as we said, options expiration day. We expect the stock price to be sort of stay stable mostly for the day and maybe pull back. I don't have a huge amount else to list, and my fingers are starting to get cold, so I just as soon call it a day if you don't have any questions. Roof is 40 years. The home product market is massive. If you tied all the software control of the Powerwall. Interesting, Jerry. Thank you. Thanks, Anthony. I have been doing workouts. Anthony is featured here. He's one of our subs, and every time I see him chiseled and fit, it makes me want to go to the gym and work out some more. So if you see his comments there, please take time to take a look at his fitness training website. Very good idea, and this dude is cut. At any rate, I want to thank all of you for joining us as usual. We weren't going to do a show today, but I did want to change it up versus the routine studio. Sorry about the noise on the side, but you survived. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Please remember to like and subscribe. Patreon support would be helpful. I wanted to encourage you to try to do 25 leg lifts per day so the knee muscles are strengthened. I also wanted to encourage you to try not to go to bed within 2 hours of eating, preferably 4 hours. Also wanted to encourage you, obviously you'll be watching for earnings. We're on a daily deal here, so if anything crazy happens or interesting happens, obviously we'll be back at it again today. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, Lehith, Road, Hebrew, Hoda, Hafez, Farsi, Ni hao ma, Chinese, Zdravstvuyte, Russian, and then Hedge Do for our friend Donovan in Sweden, Do widzenia, and Ciao from our friends, I think, in Brazil or Portugal. At any rate, have a great day. Bye for now, and thank you again for taking time out to join us, and we look forward to our next opportunity.